I want to welcome you to the information webinar on impact investing course offered by Columbia Business School. So let me get started. My name is Rit Kirati. I am one of the program leaders for Emeritus with Columbia University. I am currently a PhD in finance at Columbia Business School. And prior to joining Columbia, I spent about 13, 14 years in the industry working in various capacity. I started off my career doing investment banking with Credit Suisse in New York. And then after that, I've joined investment manager from private equity fund to hedge funds. And most recently, I was a partner at an event-driven fund based in Miami. And I invest primarily in both equity and also distressed debt. With that said, also, I want you to introduce you to the program faculty, which is Professor Bhakti Mirchandani, and she would be the one leading the entire course and with all the lectures. And she is a professor at Columbia Business School, and besides teaching, she also has a lot of experience in the industry, from engaging with investing herself, and also she also pioneered several programs to promote both all aspects of ESG within the finance industry. For example, one of her participation was to be a co-founder of this institutional allocator for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which tried to promote DEI within the investment arena. So she would be bringing in a lot of both theoretical from a teaching perspective and also the practical experience as well. So why should we do this course at Columbia Business School? Columbia is one of the leading schools in the world, and the fact that we are located in New York actually gives us a lot of advantage from teaching standpoint. We are very well connected to the industry, so we have a lot of speakers coming in to talk at the school all the time, and you would benefit from that as well in the program, whereby you're going to see a lot of guest speakers throughout the course. And Columbia School is also the home of value investing. So a lot of the teaching we're going to be doing is going to be we're going to be combining both impact investing, the impact aspect, and also the investing aspect. And a lot of it would be using a value approach to make sure we invest with a circumspect perspective. And in that way, you can generate a good return, both for socially and also for your portfolio. So we've had many accomplished alumni. We've got 85 Nobel Prize winners. We have 5 founding fathers, 9 Supreme Court justices, and 29 Academy Award winners, and also 4 US presidents. So we certainly have had a good track record of producing accomplished alumni. So now, why do we want to study impact investing? I think many of you might have already been engaged within the field. But with that said, impact investing is still a fairly new field, right? If you think about how big the field is today, this is about the total amount of asset being invested sustainably in some definition. This amount to about 23 trillion, right? If you put that in context, the total investable asset globally is probably about 150 trillion, and then maybe about 100 or so trillion of that is being invested professionally. So roughly a quarter of investable professionally managed assets are actually being invested in a sustainable fashion. And this, if you compare to about maybe 10 years ago, the focus on sustainable investing have changed quite a bit, right? The society overall have paid more attention to this. There's been a lot of demand from investors' perspective to make sure that investment manager invest sustainably, and also to make sure that we take into account all these considerations about how we invest would benefit or hurt the overall society. So who is this program for? The program, I'm going to go over the content in just a little bit, but the general idea is this is going to be for institutional investors, whether you manage your family offices or you run a certain kind of funds or you manage your own wealth as a high net worth individual. This is a course to introduce you to the field. It will help you think about how to think about impact evaluation on the investment side, also think about the portfolio management on the investing side as well. And also, this is going to be appropriate for financial advisors and also consultants who might have gotten more demand from your clients who want to know more about how they can invest sustainably. And so the course is going to be We're going to start the course actually from almost very beginning, but the course ramp up fairly quickly. So we're going to actually focus on two aspects. One is on the finance side, and the other one is on the impact side. So to the extent that you don't have any experience investing before, this is going to be appropriate for you. But to the extent that you do have some experience investing before, the course would proceed fairly quickly. So I think you would not find these to be boring or repetitive at all. And a good idea also, the course would bring in a lot of real world case studies and experiences that Professor Bhakti bring in. So that would benefit you from that standpoint. So let's go into the programs. So in this program, what we're going to try to do is we're going to start exploring some mainstream financial instrument that people can engage in to be involved in impact investing, right? So there'll be many ways, from equity, debt, fixed income, and also other alternative investing, such as there's these new kind of investment vehicles like green bonds, or maybe think about a social impact bond. And also, we also would talk about crowdfunding as well. So a lot of these bring in some nuances within how you invest in those vehicle, right? So there's a lot of things you need to know about the details of those investing vehicles, and also there's some laws and regulation that might matter how you can invest or who can invest in some of these assets. So the course would cover all those. And then we're going to go through some examples to think about how we can evaluate real world investing scenarios. So there might be some case studies of how can you evaluate these particular investing cases of whether this is going to be a good outcome for you, both on the financial side and on the impact side as well. So there'll be a lot of those cases throughout the course, from module 1. All right. If not, then I'm going to keep proceeding. So the course will be covered in 6 modules, and we're going to start off from module 1 that go over some basic concept. We're going to start off with basic concept of investing. So the whole idea is we're going to give you an overview of The course will start off giving you an overview of modern portfolio theory, right? The idea here is that investors try to trade off return versus risks, right? And one way of measuring risk is by measuring volatility. So we're going to give you these overview concept of more modern portfolio theory, and we're going to start applying these to impact investing right away. So what we're going to do here in the first module is we're going to identify these 4 core characteristics of impact investing. Some of you might have been involved in the space before, so you might already know this, but these are intentionality of what the asset owner actually want to invest in, and then the return and expectation that you might want to hope to achieve from your investment, and then what are realistic expectations for these return investment. And also the last aspect, which is unique to impact investing, is this impact measurement. How can you actually measure the impact of your investment that you're deploying capital for? And some of these might be somewhat separated, but some of them are also integrated. For example, you might know that many of these investment options nowadays also have impact measurement baked in, right? So in some way, some bond, for example, might adjust their yield based on these impact measurement. So we're going to talk about all those aspects in the course. And then we're going to move on to module 2, where we're going to focus more on this last aspect about how can we measure. And there are really 3 key ways that the course would walk you through in detail. So these are the one listed here, right? Impact money, multiple of money approach. And then there's the impact management project. And then the last one is the impact weighted accounts project. So professor is going to talk about the trade-offs between all these different approaches and how can you apply them in the real world. And the other aspect we're going to focus on also is we're going to think about the asset owners and who are the ones who might be involved in both overall asset management space and also in the impact investing. And why does that matter? It matters because it helps you think about who can be the players that you would be investing along with, and what are their roles to engage in terms of helping create these impact on their capital deployments. Right. So when we go over these asset owners, the professor is going to go through several examples of the real world. I'm sorry, I got sick recently and I thought I would be recovered. So there's going to be a lot of consideration that we have to think about. For example, there might be some mandates that some of these asset owners are abide by, or there also might be some laws that might have changed over time. For example, some pension funds might be subject to ERISA rules and regulations. So we're going to go over how those rules and regulations have changed and how that might have changed the landscape for impact investing. And then we're going to go over into fixed income impact investing in module 3. Right, so this is the part where we're going to really focus on just fixed income investing. Why do we start with fixed income investing? There are a couple of reasons. One is that, in fact, even though equity is the part that gets more attention nowadays, but the fixed income world is actually a much bigger world, both generally for an asset manager and also for impact investing as well. So we're going to start off from the basic of how we think about a bond return. We're going to go over some basic bond math. So for that, though, it's going to be helpful for people who don't have any background in finance before, because we're going to go over that fairly quickly. But even for those of you who had experience before, it's going to be a good review, right? Some of these bond math can be quite confusing in some cases. So we're going to go over that. And then we're going to think about how does ESG investing work with bond investing, right? There are a couple of things to think about. For example, one consideration people tend to talk about for impact investing is that these impact investing tend to have very long horizon payoff, right? It might create some benefit far into in one way to think about that is it creates some sort of intangible asset for the companies. But when we think about bond investing, right, bond investing doesn't really have that sort of long-term aspect per se, because if you invest in bond, especially most bonds tend to have maturity or duration that maybe doesn't exceed 10 years, for example. In that case, then your horizon might be shorter. So in that case, how does impact investing really affect you as a bond investors? And the professor is going to go through some real world examples, as well as some academic research that have gone through and look at how have these ESG focus might have affected bond yield, right? So these are real academic studies that have been conducted. So that would give you a perspective about bond returns from the ESG perspective. And then we're going to go over one particular asset, which is the green bonds. We're going to go over what it is, how big this space is, how it has evolved over time, and then think about how investors and also companies have utilized green bond for capital raising and for investing. Then in module 4, we're going to go over into public equity investing, impact investing. So there are different ways for you to engage in impact investing through public equities. One way is through these different ESG indices. So the course will go over some of these indices and how you might try to think about benchmark against these indices or also against broader index. And then we're going to talk about the real world example of when you think about investing in these indices or also through asset manager, how do these investing approaches create impact to society? So for example, one thing that we might be talking about is through activist investing, right? That one way for you to create impact is by investing in hedge fund managers who might be engaged in activism, that they want to make sure that the company that they invested in invest in a sustainable fashion. So in that way, they can engage with management to make sure that management do the right things in a way. And then you can also, we're going to be going over cases of some real world situation of where investors might have engaged in some sort of, you can say, not competition per se, in a engagement with companies to push the company's direction in the way that investors might prefer. And we also would think about the broader context of how the asset manager, the whole space, might have evolved. For example, you know that now there have been an immersion of some of these really large asset managers, for example, BlackRock, who now manages trillions and trillions of dollars of assets. How do they can help you create impact through their portfolio holdings? So those are going to be covered in module 4. And then in module 5, we're going to shift focus from public equity and we're going to focus more on private equity. So in here, we're going to start off with the basic of private equity structure, right? The way that private equity funds are structured typically they're different than these public equity funds, and it might affect how manager invest their money. For example, we know that a typical private equity fund have the investing period followed by harvesting period. So there might be some sort of incentives by the private equity fund managers to invest in certain ways. So we're going to go over all those issues. And then we're going to go over how can we design a portfolio, and also how can we design both a portfolio from the private equity manager perspective and also from the limited partner perspective who invested in these private equity fund. How can you design the LP partnership agreement in a way that makes sure that these private equity managers invest in a way that you want them to do? And we're going to actually go over some actual cases of, in this aspect, we're actually going to look at some interesting aspect of how the United States governments actually use private equity funds in a way through private partnership to invest abroad through the ESG lens. These are in a way match a little bit with the financial statecraft that become interesting recently with all the sanctions issue in Russia and so on and so forth. But we're going to look at history of how the US actually have also done that through these private investing vehicles. And then at the end of the session, at the end of the module, we're going to focus really on these DEI investing. And the professor is going to go through some case studies of foundations that have engaged in these, or how her role herself as the founder and the board member of the organization that promote DEI within the finance industry, how has she been involved in promoting these issues. And then finally, in the last module, we're going to think about how have there been some sort of new innovation within the impact investing arena, right? So there's a lot of new innovation. For example, there's the social impact bonds that allow government to think about engaging in new way of investing in interesting project without deploying upfront capital, too much upfront capital, and is also allow private parties to be engaged in these impact investing as well. So we're going to go over social impact bond in particular, and then we would also go over the crowdfunding. We're going to look at how the regulation have changed recently that allow for crowdfunding space to really flourish, and then look at how what are some of the considerations you want to think about when you engage in either promoting crowdfunding as a platform or also engaging in one. Throughout, there's going to be a lot of material for you to go through. So course generally are structured into maybe so there's 6 modules, and within each modules, they're going to be about maybe 13, 14 or so short videos. So each of these videos would last approximately maybe 5 minutes or so, maybe some shorter, some longer. And these are going to go over the basic concept of the course. And then throughout, there's going to be reading materials for you to read throughout. And you're going to have to engage in these reading as you proceed in the course. And then there would be activities for you to participate in. So these can range from discussion board, where you share your opinion and analyze certain situation and discuss it with your other participants in the course. And there would also be some activities that you would do and then submit to the online channel. But in terms of the material, we're going to be talking about, again, one on the finance side, how you can think about investing from financial return stand. And then on the other part is we're going to focus on the impact evaluation and the impact investing perspective. And you might be thinking also that these two, sometimes they can go in the same direction and sometimes they might have some sort of conflict. And the course is going to go over all those as well, talk about some cases where these two objectives might go in line, and in cases where they might be diverging. So we're going to talk about how we can address those sort of issues and look at the real world examples. There are going to be several case studies, not only for you to do. Some of it is going to be covered by the professors in the videos, and some of them are going to be through case studies that you're going to be doing it yourself. But these are some of the examples that were mentioned in the course. But beyond these, there are also many other foundations that were discussed in the course as well. I was looking through and I list out maybe 10 plus or so case examples. So I think one of the great thing about the course is really these case studies, where you're going to get to see these real world examples. In terms of the kind of engagement, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be these live sessions there's going to be the video recorded sessions with Professor Bhakti. And then there's also going to be some live sessions with the professor as well. Throughout, actually, there's going to be several guest speakers that you're going to have the opportunity to listen to. So these are spread out throughout really the I think most of the modules in the course, maybe not, I think all of them, if not maybe at least the last 5. So you're going to get to hear from the real industry, from industry speakers of how they think about all these issues and how the industry have evolved. There's going to be case studies that you have to do on your own, and then you might be sharing some of those case studies with your peers. In that way, you get feedback not only from the program leader, but also from other participants as well. And there would also be these live office that you get to engage with the program leaders. You can ask questions. And in some cases, the program leaders might also provide some sort of an overview of the materials covered by the professors in each module. The way that I run my office hours is that I tend to try to bring in the real world examples to help participants really apply the knowledge we learned in the course in practice. And throughout, you would be doing this online app as well. And there would be a dedicated program support team who can help you throughout in terms of answering your questions, both technical in terms of you have issue with the apps and so on and so forth. They can help you answer those questions. And if you have questions about the course material, they can also guide you to the program leaders as well. At the end of the course, you're going to receive the digital certificate from Columbia Business School that certify that you have completed the impact investing course with Columbia. And they are a requirement for you to complete throughout. You might have to finish a certain number of assignments to get these certificate. But generally, the program, the way I lead the program, I'm fairly flexible with the participant submission. As long as at the end of the course you submit all your required assignments, you should be able to expect to receive the certificate. And again, throughout, you have help from both the program support team, also from program leaders that can help you throughout the course. So I think that is all I have to cover for today. And certainly I encourage you to apply now. There's this link. I think the program support has just shared the link in the chat as well. And I was quite impressed by the detail that the professor go over in the course material. And it really highlight the several nuances that you have to think about, both in terms of financial side, impact side, and also about regulatory side. There's historical aspect of impact investing. There's the information about the whole industry, how it had evolved, and so on and so forth. And that really gave me a lot of, even after watching it a few times, I get new information all the time. So I think that would be something that you would really benefit from the course. I really hope you all would sign up for the course, and I look forward to seeing you on the Emeritus course. Thanks again.